Progressive changes won't happen overnight, but they will happen. There will be many obstacles that stand in our way, but we will overcome them.
New York City's mayor-elect Bill de Blasio had a long journey to the Brooklyn YMCA where he celebrated on Tuesday night, from the family home scarcely half a mile away where he launched his mayoral campaign on a cold winter's day 9 months earlier.
Never in recent history has a New York City mayor served while having a child in our public schools. Well, I intend to rewrite that history this year.
Standing in Brooklyn, not Manhattan, and beside his African-American wife Shirlene McRae and soon-to-be-famous son Dante, the sign on his podium said Bill de Blasio, but it might as well have said not Michael Bloomberg.
It turned out that this race was about a large segment of voters who were very angry about the economy, about wealth in New York, about feeling marginalized. For de Blasio, the timing was right. The Bloomberg fatigue was unprecedented. The rest of the field was profoundly flawed. And perhaps because he was seen as such a long shot, he wasn't scrutinized with the precision that his rivals were. Came out of nowhere, and suddenly he was our mayor.
So how did a 6'5" Italian-American win after a solid but unspectacular career of moving through the ranks of the New York Democratic Party machine slower and lower than the rising stars of his generation to the largely anonymous job of city public advocate?
And that's why today, here on my block in Brooklyn, I proudly declare my candidacy for mayor of New York City.
It was a frigid day that brought out just the diehard supporters of de Blasio, about a couple hundred, a lot of people from the neighborhood. In fact, it felt like a neighborhood block party, minus the barbecue. I covered several of the kickoffs for the campaigns. Chris Quinn's, for example, was done by video, and then she had this 5-borough neighborhood tour. John Liu had the most raucous rally at City Hall, hundreds of people. Bill de Blasio's, by contrast, no shortage of enthusiasm among the diehards, but did it feel at that moment that that was sort of, had the makings of this juggernaut? No.
In 2009, former City Comptroller Bill Thompson was the one who carried the Democratic banner against the billionaire Mayor Bloomberg and came up just a few points short. A 2013 repeat run was inevitable.
I do believe them to be the next mayor of the city of New York.
But his first campaign was widely criticised for lack of zeal and organisation, and there was no guarantee that it would be better this time around.
Based on the economic situation we were in,
the early Democratic frontrunner Christine Quinn tried magazine covers, photo shoots, book launches, but all failed to build on her early polling lead. Many of the Democratic faithful now saw Quinn as a traitor for using her position as City Council Speaker to help Mayor Bloomberg get a third term.
Job creation is exactly what I need to make sure, not just that this...
Why did you push Bloomberg for a third term?
We'll talk about that too. Let me just finish here. I'll come over and talk to you. Okay?
Why did you do that? We voted twice for term limits.
De Blasio was relentless.
I know the next mayor is going to be a Democrat because I know that person is going to be me.
Speaker Quinn, I appreciate your sense of confidence, but something that Mayor Bloomberg didn't fully understand, the people get to make this decision, and the people haven't spoken yet.
Fair enough.
In May, Quinn revealed that she had once suffered from bulimia and alcoholism in an interview with Times reporter Kate Taylor.
When I spent time with her talking about her bulimia, she was nervous, understandably, because it was a quite personal subject. But also by that point, she and her consultants were starting to be worried that this was going to be a tougher slog than they had thought. There had been some negative stories about her temper, and then less than a week later, Anthony Weiner jumped into the race and quickly surged to the top of the polls.
Former Congressman Weiner was back from Washington after a scandal involving camera phone selfie abuse, but flush with election cash, ambition, and attitude.
This was my neighborhood growing up, a middle-class kid in Brooklyn.
He had this vigor that was unmatched, and he immediately began to suck up all the oxygen out of the campaign. In fact, that expression was used time and again to describe his presence.
Weiner was a disaster for de Blasio, an anti-Bloomberg candidate with outer borough roots and a talent for angry. Caught on the hop in the Bronx, de Blasio wouldn't even mention his name.
You know, anyone who wants to run is welcome in this race. I think what's happening is people are engaging more and more.
At this point, de Blasio is desperate to attack Anthony Weiner, who he despises and always has. And his aides, they have to hold him back. Every time he talked about Anthony Weiner, he wasn't talking about A Tale of Two Cities.
We love this city.
This is a place that in too many ways has become a tale of two cities.
Out on the trail, Bill was connecting with people every day. I remember being at a bar in Park Slope where he talked about the Tale of Two Cities, talked about how this doesn't have to be a city for the elite. And after he spoke, I watched these young professionals flock to him and tell their story about being priced out of yet another neighborhood, not being able to afford the first home they've dreamed of, or even the rent of the home that they were living in. And you could sort of feel that something was going on here.
All de Blasio could do was hammer home his message of inequality time and again, from the very first day of his campaign to the very last.
A tale of two cities.
A tale of two cities.
A tale of two cities. To address this tale of two cities we're living, we do need to raise taxes on those who make $500,000 or more.
A Tale of Two Cities dominated first de Blasio's campaign and then others, as they sought without success to undermine what had become a campaign-defining catchphrase.
It crystallized what his campaign stood for. His opponents couldn't do the same. If I had to recall, I couldn't tell you a single crystallizing message that Christine Quinn or Bill Thompson ever projected to the public.
The city of opportunity.
You know, I'm running for mayor because I love this city.
I want to tell you a little bit about Bill de Blasio.
De Blasio's political commercials were on another level, and a new celebrity in the form of his son Dante.
And then the path to the Democratic primary cleared for de Blasio. Just as quickly as he arrived, Anthony Weiner departed. Old cell phone indiscretions surfaced again. With Bill Thompson failing to energize even his own community, African Americans, Hispanics and progressive voters flocked to de Blasio's camp. He won the primary election by a huge margin.
I think de Blasio just represented somebody who is the face of New York, and I wanted him to be the mayor.
And I'm sorry, my old boss, Rudy Giuliani, who I am not.
In the general election entered Joe Lota as the Republican candidate, former Deputy Mayor to Rudolph Giuliani and MTA Transport Chief. But all Lota's years in the public eye obscured the fact that those were appointed, not elected, jobs. Lota had faced a much less competitive field in the Republican primary in September. He was a first-time politician who had only defeated two first-time politicians, and it showed.
At many points in the primary, when none of the Democrats were really jumping out of the pack, people thought that the general election could be a real race and that Joe Lota had a chance. After all, a Democrat hadn't won an election for mayor in the city for 20 years.
Lota did make efforts to reach out to minority communities, going on marches and parades. But these were already locked up by de Blasio, who at every turn mentioned Lota's patron, Rudy Giuliani, a racially polarizing figure to many. De Blasio scarcely needed to do anything. Lota was tying himself in knots over his old boss, even as he tried to untangle himself.
Look, I am getting sick and tired of you impugning the integrity of Rudy Giuliani. My old boss, Rudy Giuliani, who I am not. I am Joe Lota.
Where's the press event?
It's on 84th, it's about 4 blocks down.
I was told 2 blocks.
You can tell when a candidate loves to campaign, when they relish the politicking. Lota had never done it before. He wasn't especially good at it, and it didn't seem to bring him a lot of pleasure.
Lota's really last chance to change the dynamic in the race was in the 3 televised debates, but he really failed to make any dent in de Blasio's by then staggering lead.
It reminds me of that boxing match between Rocky and Drago. I mean, quite honestly, we know what happened in that match. The underdog won.
One final push, appearing alongside Giuliani himself on election eve.
Don't forget to vote for Joe. See former Mayor Giuliani and our next Mayor Joe Lota. Don't forget to vote tomorrow. Yeah, right.
To no avail. It was a walkover.
BDB! 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 BDB!
De Blasio, the candidate, has raised expectations sky high. De Blasio, the mayor, may find that his first challenge is letting them down gently. In all likelihood, he'll be replacing the popular police commissioner Ray Kelly with his own choice, at a time when the city's crime rates are at historic lows. Any sign of a backslide could hurt his reputation in his early months in office.
Alongside de Blasio's criticism of the police's stop-and-frisk tactic, the centerpiece of his campaign was taxing the wealthy to fund pre-kindergarten education. But that may be unlikely soon, because despite their public embraces, Governor Andrew Cuomo has indicated he's not likely to approve a raise in taxes. It is a huge step up, from public advocate managing an office of a few dozen people to the top job in the city.
Good morning. Meet again.
5 boroughs, 8 million people, in January, 1 new mayor.